process of self-actualization and spiritual growth or awakening is immensely challenging. Now, one of the biggest challenges as we move, right, as we move from our inauthentic self to an aligned, authentic expression of who we really are, we bridge a gap between our own understanding and self-image and our heart's desire or our spiritual expression. For our own realities, this can cause a lot of resistance. It can be quite difficult as we begin to realize deep truths about ourselves and we realize that changes need to happen. But as we evolve and as we shift and as we move, we start to change, we start to grow. And one thing that I've noticed throughout this process that is almost more challenging than our own inner change, our inner shift, our inner letting go of this idea of who we are, is the resistance that we can face from people that love us, the resistance that we can face from friends, family, or even people that we don't know that well, acquaintances, maybe people that we've not seen in a number of years that we then bump into. The difficulty with this is, we each, as much as we have a self-image, as much as we have an idea of who we are, okay, I am Ricky, I have these certain traits, I look a certain way, there are certain ways that I like to behave, etc., etc. We also kind of develop images within our minds of everyone that we know and everyone that we meet. Whether we know it or not, we have almost like avatars, like little characters that are contained in our mind. And if you think about it, any time that you're not in the direct presence of someone that you know, any thought or association with them is based purely in your memory. That memory might be encoded with certain emotions, certain feelings, certain triggers, certain qualities to these memories that bring it alive, as if there's a living, breathing other being in your mind in that moment. But ultimately, it's still a memory. It's still a collection of thoughts, feelings, experience, emotions, and perhaps on a deeper level, some kind of psychic energy or connection there. But either way, unless we're in the direct presence with someone, when we bring them to mind, it's a very subjective experience. It's coming from within our own psyche, right? This is the same for all of us. So it also applies, and it can freak you out when you think of it too much, but it also applies to the way that we are perceived by everyone we know and everyone we love. Because when we're not with them, the same thing's going on. They've got an image of us that is never going to be who we are. There's I think it's a Japanese proverb about the three faces, about the face that you show the world, essentially the facade that you show the world, the face that you show people close to you, and then your true self, the self that you only really show yourself. The idea of spiritual awakening and self-actualization is that we move as far away from the facade and as close to our true nature in all of our interactions. So we become congruent, we become consistent with everyone that we meet and with ourselves. That's the joy, that is the beauty of self-actualization. However, as we change and as we evolve, and remember, we're not fixed beings, we're always in flux, we're always changing, we're always evolving. But as this process unfolds, and for some of us it's more accelerated, it's more noticeable, especially if we go through a profound spiritual awakening, what starts to happen is we meet people in the present moment or in memory or through different forms of communication. And what we present, our being and what we exude and the presence that we bring with us doesn't match the idea or the image that someone has of you. Now, the way that this manifests is in someone being surprised or somehow upset or irritated by your way of being. And it doesn't mean that you're acting in a way that is wrong. But what happens is, as you express and as things change and as evolve, if someone's image of you hasn't updated and isn't closer aligned to who you are now, in this present moment, there's going to be dissonance. There's going to be dissonance between the image someone has of you and your being in that present moment. The trouble with this is, when we experience dissonance, So cognitive dissonance is a form of, or an attempt to either suppress things or experiences that don't match the beliefs that we have, or to bridge the gap. So there's this idea that if we experience someone, let's say we've known someone for years, they've always been a certain way, they go through an awakening, and they start to act differently. Something within sends almost like an alarm bell. There's a resistance to that, because we all kind of like this illusion of fixed things, especially with people that we've known for a while. There's a sense of security that we can get from knowing that people are very much the same, knowing what to expect. So when someone transforms and grows, the moment we kind of sense that shift, resistance can arise, and then that is expressed as frustration or annoyance at the way someone's being. And by this, I don't even mean someone's being rude. You know, I don't mean that it's a case of like, if I'm being a dick, that then people get annoyed. It's purely by just making different choices or changing behavior, as we begin to live closer and closer to our values, as we begin to live closer and closer to the truth of who we are. The importance, and the reason I want to make this video, is that no matter, as you grow and as you evolve and as you express and as you set boundaries, you will guarantee that you're going to upset people. And the people you upset are usually going to be those closest to you. They're going to be the ones that question why you're doing things differently. They're going to be the ones that end up being annoyed or resenting you for certain decisions that you make, even when they're in your best interest, even if you just become less available. You know, I personally, like, my social availability now compared to a few years ago is drastically reduced, purely because solitude is part of my spiritual practice and my creative process as well. I don't drink anymore, and my close group of, let the siren, this is the thing living in a city like Berlin, sometimes you have distractions. My group of friends from university, we bonded around going out clubbing, you know, as so many people do. And even a close group of friends in Berlin, the lot bonding was around drinking. I don't drink now, I don't really go out clubbing, at least very rarely, because that doesn't feel aligned for me now. But when you go through a process of expressing this, it can cause upset in people, it can cause even confusion as people try and update and reconcile their self-image. So as you go through awakening, as you experience this more and more frequently, your mission, your spiritual mission and your challenge is to retain conviction in what you're doing, is to align with the truth of your being, even when faced from challenges from other people. This is a process, a strengthening process, because initially, as we're just kind of working this stuff out, we might remain corruptible. So someone might challenge us, oh yeah, go on then, I'll have a drink, or I'll go out, or yeah, no, I'll do something that doesn't feel so much aligned. The goal for where we want to be is to have so much conviction in our own truth that it does not reflect on us whatsoever, not one bit, when someone projects their self-image onto us, okay? So to recap, we each have an image of ourselves, and we each have an image of everyone that we know contained within our minds. And when people change, those images have to update, but this can take time. And as we go through a process of spiritual awakening and we change the way that we are, the way that we relate, the way that we love, the way that we express, anyone in our lives that has an outdated, we can think of it like software. There's another siren, it's not ideal, is it? One day I'll get a studio to make these videos, it will happen, or live somewhere quiet. When these images are being updated, then there's going to be frustration, there's going to be tension, right? So the idea is for people to eventually, and through communication, this is a vital tool, update that image of who you are, and then there's greater harmony in relationships. It's not our responsibility. This is the thing. It's not our responsibility to control the images of other people. That's not something that we can do. All we can do is just express ourselves and then have compassion. You know, have compassion for the images that people create. So many of us spend so much time trying to mold and control the images that other people have. That's inauthentic. That then leads us to act outside of our values. So the takeaway of this is, throughout awakening, there will be resistance, but retain conviction in our truth and understand that as living, breathing beings, we're always changing and we're always evolving. And as particularly if you go down the route of self-inquiry and growth, you're going to change rapidly, and that can cause confusion and tension and frustration in people. But the challenge is to remain unaffected by that, to remain compassionate, to remain loving, but to keep following your path with conviction, courage and heart.